Mr. Rex.
The state of Wisconsin comes out with a new set of voting rules based on the fact that none of the voting acts coming through Congress are going to pass anymore. So we'll talk about the first one that's going to affect the primary that comes next month. In other news, Texas hostages come out and tell their story about what happened in the 11th hour standoff over the weekend. So we'll talk just a bit about that. North Korea is conducting more missile tests this month. So we'll go over what that means for all of us out there and everything in the world. And Ghislaine Maxwell ends the fight to keep 8 John Doe's secret. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Boy, am I completely prepared today, I'll tell you that right off the bat. I get started here, I don't have the live chat up. I overslept by like 10 minutes. So, yeah, we're doing a really good last day of quarantine, aren't we? It is, and this is my last day. So, pretty much as soon as I'm done here, tomorrow I'll be going back to work for the first time. So, we don't get to do any of the long stuff anymore. So, we're back to that, which, thank God. Thank God I can actually interact with other human beings again. Because that has been the longest part of this for the entire thing of, oh, well, we don't really want you to interact with anybody else. So, hey, don't go to the grocery store, don't go to the bank, don't go to this, don't go to that, don't go to the next thing here. And, yeah, that's where we sit right now. And, well, a little bit just kind of jumbled in the head here. I don't know what it was. I couldn't sleep for crap last night. I feel dehydrated as hell. But this has been a week of probably the most annoying mild symptoms that there was. Just enough mild symptomatic reaction here to remind you of, hey, you're not supposed to be going outside. You're not supposed to be interacting with people. Hey, you feel that little bit of pain around your chest muscles there? Yeah, you're not supposed to be interacting with anybody. So be a good little quarantine and stay in. Oh yeah, we're not going to give you enough where you're coughing your brains out or you have a constant fever or you have to sleep all the time or anything else like that. Nope, you get to be wide awake and you feel that pain and you can try to sleep it all away, but that's not going to do anything. And hey, it's going to be just enough that if you want to try to do a real estate lesson or something, yeah, you're not going to get anything out of it either. So, and that's kind of where it went towards the end. Like towards the beginning, it was actually a little bit better and I got a bunch of stuff done. I got my gardening done. I did get a couple of the real estate lessons done. I got all my dishes done. My floors were swept. They didn't get mopped. I thought for sure I was going to get that done this week, but all my clothes got put away. So yeah, just kind of as it came into the point of debilitating, it was fun. But well, with any luck, it's going to be over here. I hope that the lightheadedness goes away. That's the part I'm most worried about because I run equipment where I work. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what goes with this, and we'll see how it goes. But we've got to get into the news instead. So if you guys are ready, let's get into it here. Let's get the live chat up for you guys and see what we have going on with that. So starting off, go check out turnsofpagesproductions.com, turnsofpagesproductions.com. Once we get started, we'll be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs, where we're going to carry great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the already conservative, the upcoming the upcoming Britt and Sean Hickman project, and the Porch Boys. So go check all of them out. They're all great friends. Go check out all of their shows, and once we get back up and running, you can go and check them out all in one place. So that's going to be a great time. Come back and enjoy it. turnsofpagesproductions.com. Let's look at your finance for the morning here. The Dow, this is the same chart we looked at yesterday, is still at 35,911.81. That is down to a 181 or a 0.5% from Friday. Markets were closed yesterday for Martin Luther King Day, and they're just starting to get back out and up and running again. So we'll probably see some motion start to get ready and go and see what's there on the first day of a shortened trading week. So we'll see what happens with that. On your Bitcoin, let's get a refresh on that guy. Bitcoin had another down day, down 712 US dollars and 10 US cents to 41,505 US dollars and 30 US cents. That is down 1.69% throughout the day yesterday. So Bitcoin is still starting to fall. Looks like people are tapping some of their savings and assets to try to make sure that they and their families eat, which is, one good thing for having Bitcoin is you do have the extra asset to tap fairly quickly if you do need to feed family or get something in an emergency. Looking in at your scrap prices, copper is up on the average, steel is down, aluminum is up on the average. Looking at your individual plays, copper is all in the green right now, including brass. Straight up in the green everywhere. Steel is more mixed, light iron is up, BX steel is up. Number 1 steel, cast iron, rotors, complete car, shreddable steel are all down. Stainless is up. Aluminum is also mixed with siding is up. Aluminum copper fin is up. Radiators are down. Cans are up. Sheet aluminum is down. Aluminum rims are up. Motors are up. Ballasts are down. Lead is down. Batteries are down. Catalytic converters remain to be mixed. Small foreign, large GM are all up. Regular domestic and small GM are down. Compressors are up, alternators are up, carbide is up. Your computer plays, hard drives, motherboards and power supplies are all up. Low-grade boards are down, and a full PC tower is up. So that's what we see. Coming in with your scrap metal prices, adjust and decide what it is you have in the scrap pile that needs to come in based on these prices. Let's see what IBD has to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures fall, tech dive as Treasury yield hits 2-year high, Apple, Qualcomm near buy points. From Ed Carson, Dow Jones futures fell Tuesday morning along with S&P 500 futures and especially NASDAQ futures as the 10-year Treasury yield spiked to a fresh 2-year high. The stock market rally is set to undercut key levels once again. The stock market rally is still standing, but bruised and wobbly. The major averages are testing key support areas, though the NASDAQ has held its 200-day line so far. The NASDAQ has lagged the S&P 500 index since last February, with that underperformance increasing over the past 2 months. Apple and Apple iPhone chipmaker Qualcomm, not Tesla. Usually it's Apple and Tesla. Apple and Qualcomm are 2 growth stocks holding up relatively well, while Tesla, China rival XPeng, is right an early entry, and we go back to the top of the article. Is right in an early entry. Meanwhile, DE stock is setting up while SM Energy broke out on Friday. However, Apple, Qualcomm, and XPeng retreated with most stocks before Tuesday's open. Deere stock edged lower. SM stock rose with crude oil prices. Goldman Sachs reported weaker than expected earnings early Tuesday, though the Dow Financial Giants revenue topped. GS stock fell in pre-market trading after moving below its 200-day line on Friday. Signature Bank comfortably beat EPS views. SBNY stock at the edge of a buy zone is not yet active. Chucky Schwab is due before the market open. Schwab stock is extended. XPeng is on the IBD 50 list. Deere was Friday's IBD stock of the day. On your futures, Dow futures fell 0.75% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures sank just shy of a full percent. and NASDAQ 100 futures dove 1.5%. The 10-year Treasury yield rose 4 basis points to 1.81%, matching a 2-year high. 10-year yield hit 1.83% overnight. The 2-year Treasury yield topped 1% for the first time since 2020. Crude oil prices rose more than 1%, hitting multi-year highs as Houthi militants used drones to hit Abu Dhabi, striking some petroleum tankers. Ooh. Well, that's going to be fun coming into the rest of the winter. U.S. markets were closed Monday in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, though other exchanges around the world were open. China's central bank cut its 1-year landing rate by 10 basis points to 2.85%, the first cut since April of 2020. The monetary push comes amid a slew of Chinese economic data. China's economy expanded 4% in the fourth quarter versus a year earlier, better than views for 3.3%, but down from quarter three's 4.9% pace. GDP expanded 8.1% for the full year. December industrial production climbed 4.3% versus a year earlier, slightly better than forecast, but retail sales grew just 1.7%, less than half of estimates for 3.8%. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Man, is it probably nice to be in a country where you can cook your books and make your economy look like it's doing whatever the hell you want it to look like to the rest of the world, when your retail sales still only grow 1.7%. So that's what we see off of that. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Let's grab one from the street briefly and go from there. From the street, stock market today, 118, Dow futures slump as oil prices, Treasury yields surge, tech extends slide. From Martin Backerdax. Stock futures slump amid surge in global oil prices and a jump in benchmark Treasury bond yields. Inflation fears resurface as oil hits a new 7-year high, and JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon sees as many as 6 Fed rate hikes before the end of the year. Benchmark 2-year note yields rise to 1.03%, the highest in 2 years, while the 10-year yields hit a post-pandemic peak of 1.831%. Uh-oh. Apparently I'm good at hearing car issues. What did I miss? I need transmissions to go on sale soon. Uh-oh. Did it give up? Let's see. Benchmark 2-year note yields rise to 1.03%, the highest in 2 years, while 10-year yields hit a post-pandemic peak of 1.831% in overnight trading. Earnings take center stage this week, with 40 S&P 500 companies reporting. Refinitiv forecast to see collective profits rising to 23.1% to $434.4 billion. Goldman Sachs misses quarter 4 earnings forecast, even as investment banking fees surge amid a record year for M&A activity. Airlines warn of flight cancellation chaos as 5G rollouts are set to begin later on this week. U.S. equity futures slumped lower Tuesday, while Treasury bond yields leapt and oil prices surged to the highest levels in 7 years, as investors look to kick off another key week in corporate earnings, gripped by concern over inflation and Federal Reserve rate hikes. Benchmark 2-year note yields rose past 1% in overnight trading for the first time in nearly 2 years, reflecting investor concern for not only a prolonged period of faster inflation readings, but also an aggressive response from the Fed, which could rate rates at least 3 times this year. I think they mean raise rates. The CME's group Fed Watch tool is pricing an 88.4% chance of a hike in March, while JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon warned last week that as many as 6 rate increases could be needed to combat the fastest inflation in 40 years. So, a lot of stuff looking, a lot of stuff moving here, and a lot of this is the big banks and the big businesses trying to stop inflation, but I think that cat is out of the bag. I think that cat is done, and they know it. There's nothing they can do about it except for come back out and make it harder to go back and borrow money. Which for those of us who want to buy property this year, kind of sucks, but we'll see what happens. We'll see where this goes. We're going to head out of finance, and start into the big news of the day. And we are going to start, of course, with my state, because in the wake of the end of the Voting Rights Acts that will not be able to pass through the filibuster, we now sit here with my state, Wisconsin, trying to set up their new election rules as we come into the primaries here. And we are going to start here today with NPR. A Wisconsin judge rules absentee ballot drop boxes are not allowed under state law. This is from Sean Johnson. Sean Johnson has to remind you that you need to donate to NPR. They need our money, comrade, to make sure that they can continue to spread their communist ideals around the country. So make sure that you hit that big red donate button, because they need our money. NPR, Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. A Waukesha County judge has ruled that absentee ballot drop boxes are not allowed under Wisconsin law, a ruling that could potentially remove an option for voting ahead of the state's crucial midterm elections. Ruling from the bench on Thursday, Circuit Court Judge Michael Boren ordered the Wisconsin Elections Commission to rescind its guidance to clerks on how to use the drop boxes, saying WEC has exceeded its authority when it issued the recommendations. In looking at the statutes, there's no specific authorization for drop boxes, Boren said. Boren's ruling sided with conservative Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty in its lawsuit against the commission. The ruling is all but certain to be appealed. Of course it is, because they need to have these drop boxes for honk honk. Nothing bad happened in the 2020 election, and nothing bad is going to happen in the midterms. The Elections Commission issued the guidance in 2020, first in March and then again in August, in the run-up to Wisconsin's presidential election. The move came as more and more residents turned to absentee voting during the pinko-pox pandemic. The commission's attorney, Assistant AG Stephen Kilpatrick, argued that in court that the documents were meant to be advice to local clerks who run elections. These memos are guidance documents because they guide local election officials, Kilpatrick said. They do not order them to do anything. But WILL attorney Luke Berg argued that because there's no state law specifically allowing for drop boxes, there's no legal standard for what form they should take. A shoebox on a bench in a park would be legal for collecting ballots, Berg said. Now, that's absurd, of course, but that's the logical consequence of the position that the commission is taking. Judge Boren agreed, noting that while the Elections Commission's guidance went into great detail on the construction and placement of drop boxes, the law did not allow them. All of that is good and nice, but there's no authority to do it, Boren said. Boren called the Commission's memo a majority policy decision that alters how our absentee ballot process operates, he said. It was broad enough that it should have been issued as an administrative rule, which would require the legislature's approval. Boren said he was giving the Elections Commission until January 27th to rescind its Dropbox guidance to clerks. The Commission or other parties of the case could potentially appeal the case before that happens. Staff and WEC commissioners plan to review the court's order and consult with legal counsel in the coming days, said Wisconsin Elections Commission spokesperson Riley Vetterkind, who I believe is an Evers appointee. The case is one of several filed by Republicans and their allies in an attempt to change the rules for voting heading into the 2022 election. Boren's ruling comes just days after GOP lawmakers on the legislature's Joint Committee for the Review of Administrative Rules ordered the Elections Commission to reissue its ballot box guidance as an emergency rule, which would give GOP lawmakers the power to block it. While drop boxes have become one of the many flashpoints following the November 2020 presidential election where nothing bad happened, there was a time in the not-too-distant past where they weren't considered controversial. For example, a September 25, 2020 letter from an attorney for Republican legislative leaders explicitly endorsed the use of drop boxes. There is a... And I'll actually look in, we'll talk a bit about what a drop box could mean if you do it in a decent way, like if you're going to the county clerk's office or something like that. If you're going, like, for me in Redacted, where I live, if there was a drop box inside of City Hall and the police station where I go to vote, that in and of itself would probably not be the worst thing in the world. And hell, in Redacted where I live, it would be less, I think, of an issue, except for the fact that people are coming in from out of town to come and do grocery shopping too, because, you know, we're pretty well surrounded by farmland, literally, in this town. And some of those districts change throughout this. But I mean, for city people, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have one outside the local Piggly Wiggly or the local Quick Trip too. Except, yeah, no. I'm going to take that back, because I don't like that idea. But to have them in an official polling place, especially your official polling place where your ballot is keyed to where you're regularly polling, that's one thing to do. Then you go into the police station, the city building, your regular precinct. Sometimes that's in a school around here. Sometimes that's in some sort of state building. Sometimes it's the post office. You'll go in any one of those places, and yeah, it'll be there. It's ready to go. And then you know that you go to that place to vote, so you know that you're in your correct precinct instead of them all having to come back out and open the ballots back up and, oh, this is a vote for somebody that we don't like, but does this go out to this precinct or that precinct, or what precinct does this go to? Which is all well and good. That's one way to do a ballot drop box. But like, we were doing stuff like Democracy in the Park over in Madison, where college kids from all over the place, some of them probably not eligible to vote in Wisconsin, or harvested ballots were another problem off of this, or numerous other things numerous other problems with drop boxes were happening left and right and center. And then everything was being gathered into the middle of a big park in Madison that definitely didn't have an outcome in mind. Not in Madison. They would never have something like that. So that's one of the ways that we see what's going on with this. I do think this is a good idea. I hope that there's legislation filed and they find a way to do more like my idea. Where if we are going to have absentee ballots, which I do believe is going to be continuing, and I think it is going to, with Evers involved, I think that's going to be continuing at probably not the level it was last year or 2 years ago, but, you know, some level anyway. To have the legislature come back out and actually define how a drop box should work instead of just coming back to eliminate that, but we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. And that's what we see coming up of that. Another one here from WISN 12, which let's listen to this quick. So this is a video of their Dropbox confusion.
They popped up in hundreds of communities during the 2020 election and are still there today, as we found ballot drop boxes, a response to the pandemic and dramatic rise in early voting.
Were there any issues with drop boxes in 2020 in Milwaukee?
No, so our drop boxes are much more secure than using just a United States Postal Service box in many ways.
Last week, Waukesha County Judge Michael Boren ruled absentee ballot drop boxes aren't legal in Wisconsin, and no city may be immediately impacted more than Milwaukee. The city installed 15 drop boxes in 2020, spending nearly $70,000 in grant money. And now a critical mayoral primary looms February 15th, and election officials statewide are quickly working to rewrite the rules for voters and ensure voters don't bring their ballots to a drop box.
They've exploded all over the state. Over 500 municipalities were using drop boxes. So it's certainly not a partisan issue or Democrat versus Republican, big city versus small city.
This case is about the rule of law.
The Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which argued the case on behalf of 2 Wisconsin voters, says the legislature must approve the use, and lawmakers haven't.
Our interest is primarily the rulemaking process and the rule of law, ensuring that the rule of law is followed and that The state statutes are followed, but there are also significant election law issues at play here too.
Here in Milwaukee, the drop boxes are now covered, but they'll remain in place for the time being. An appeal in the case is likely, and the case could make it to the state Supreme Court. In Milwaukee, I'm Matt Smith, WISN 12 News.
So, and that's what they're seeing out of Milwaukee with this, and that's that. Like I said, there is a big. There are a few actually big primaries that are coming up here right at the beginning. Out of Milwaukee, election officials across the state are working to quickly rewrite absentee ballot rules for voters ahead of the February 15th primary after Waukesha County Judge Michael Boren ruled absentee drop boxes aren't legal in Wisconsin. The city spent some $70,000 in grant money for the boxes, installation and security cameras at each site. Our drop boxes are much more secure than using a USPS box in many ways. Yeah, they've exploded all over the state. Well, we were sitting here in 2020 and no idea how any of this was going to work or how absentee was going to happen. So that's what we see coming from that. What do you say? I think this could be done. In fact, for Milwaukee, I think there should be more drop boxes. And it should be in your precinct. So when you go through, when you do your voter ID, you find out where your precinct is, and that's the drop box that you go to. Only. And you don't touch or go anywhere near any other drop box. Nothing outside a grocery store, nothing outside of a bank, nothing outside of anything else. You just go to your precinct. And that's where your drop box is. You check in, you wave to the lady at the front desk, you say, hey, I got my ballot, do I put it here? She says, are you in this district? Let me see your ID. She looks at the ID, oh yeah, you drop it right there, and there it is. But as more and more of the pinko pox starts to go away, I think a lot of this is going to be a lot less of an issue as well. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Let's grab one from the Blaze. As Democrats fall flat in their push to target the Senate filibuster, D.C. Mayor says, we wouldn't even be in this situation if Washington, D.C. had 2 senators. From Alex Nitzberg. Let me read this for just a moment, and then I will tell you what actually should be happening with this. Because you haven't heard it on this channel before. While Democrats had hoped to change the filibuster rules so they could ram election-related legislation through the U.S. Senate, they have been unable to do so because some Democratic senators will not support targeting the filibuster. But during a speech on Monday, Democratic Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser said that the situation would not even be an issue if the city had 2 senators. Bowser said that we cannot talk about voting rights without talking about the disenfranchisement of 700,000 taxpaying Americans right here in Washington, D.C., a legacy of slavery in Jim Crow America. Today we're talking about the filibuster, but consider this. We wouldn't even be in this situation if D.C. had 2 senators, the 2 senators we deserve. Let's listen.
To the King family, to our honorable members of the Congress of the United States, and to my fellow Americans, good afternoon. I want to thank you for gathering today, Speaker Pelosi, of course, in our beautiful Washington, D.C., to honor the birthday and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We, of course, know that Dr. King played an integral role in desegregating America and helping us to get the Civil Rights Act. We cannot think of a better way to honor his legacy than to speak up, to take a stand, and to take action to ensure that Americans nationwide have their voices heard and counted. Across the nation, we know that states are passing anti-democratic, anti-voting bills restricting the will of the people by the slimmest margins. I, like most Americans, find myself wondering what Dr. King would make of this moment we find ourselves in. It is a moment, sadly, that we're all too familiar with. What would he say about the inaction on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which has already been ready for over a year. We know what he would say because he fought that fight his entire life. What would he say about a filibuster that stands in the way of protecting the most basic of American rights? Again, we know what he would say because he was fighting this fight 60 years ago. This fight, a fight for fundamental rights as Americans, the fight to make true the ideals of our democracy. And we know today that enough is enough. As President Biden said last month, we are standing at an inflection point in our democracy. Do we accept minority rule? Do we give up the dream of democracy in America? Do we give up on the idea of forming a more perfect union? Do we stand back and allow the minority to dig in its heels to preserve a system and ideals that are relics of the past? And we say together, we can't and we won't. And I came here today to make sure that no one forgets about Washington, D.C., because we cannot talk about voting rights without talking about the disenfranchisement of 700,000 tax-paying Americans right here in Washington, D.C., a legacy of slavery and Jim Crow America.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with Jim Crow America. That's in the Constitution. X amount of space, I believe it's, 10 miles by 10 miles by 10 miles by 10 miles, is to be set out and away to a point where there is no state affiliation because, and it's supposed to be its own fully functional city so that they don't have to depend on another state above anybody else, and therefore don't make decisions in Washington, D.C. based on the needs of the one state that they're depending on. That's what this is. But if you really want to go down this road, by the way, I would say that it's time, because they keep complaining about this, it is time to separate out everything in Washington, D.C. that isn't the mall. Everything that isn't the mall, and probably another couple blocks outside of the mall, where we'll set up the water and electricity for the federal buildings. You know, bulldoze a few of the houses right there, set up the utilities there, so that they don't have to depend on Maryland, and everything else just outside of those couple blocks gets ceded itself back to Maryland. Hey, then you'll have senators, but they're not going to be the senators that you want. They're not going to be our own fresh new senators, and it's not going to be a 102-person Senate. It's just going to be a 100-person Senate. But if this is the issue that you want to push, I agree. These people should get their full representation, in spite of the fact that, yes, they fully go out and choose to live in Washington, D.C. They should. They should have the representation. Cede back all that land to Maryland. Make that a part of the Baltimore Metro. Get everybody else. Get them representation. Let them have the senators that the people of Baltimore have chosen for them. But see, that's not the way that you want this. You want this so you'll always win again. So that's what we see going on with that. From NPR, once again, let's talk a little bit about what happened in Texas. A Texas rabbi threw a chair at the gunman before he and two other hostages escaped. This is from Joe Hernandez over at NPR. And remember, did you donate the last time? Because they need our money, comrades. So make sure you hit the big red donate button. And make sure that you help them out. NPR. Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. Sorry about that. Still a little bit plugged up in the nose there. One of the hostages who escaped from a gunman, holding 3 people captive in a Texas synagogue over the weekend, has recounted the harrowing final moments of the tense 10-hour standoff. Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker said in an interview with CBS This Morning that at one point he noticed the gunman wasn't in a good position, and Citron Walker made sure the other 2 hostages were ready to flee. I told them to go, I threw a chair at the gunman, and I headed for the door, and all 3 of us were able to get out without even a shot being fired, Citron Walker said. Video from the local TV station, WFAA, shows 3 people run out of the synagogue before a 4th person emerges, holding what appears to be a gun. The person then retreats back inside, and moments later, police breach the synagogue. A 4th hostage had been freed earlier on that day. Citron Walker's comments came just hours after the FBI identified the alleged hostage taker as Malik Faisal Akram. A 44-year-old British man, Akram died on the scene, but authorities haven't said if he took his own life or he was killed by police. Well, he was a good Irish Catholic guy, so he couldn't have taken his own life. I mean, think how good in English that name is. He's just a regular British citizen after all. President Biden called the incident an act of terror, and the federal authorities say they are now investigating it as terrorism. Let's see. This is the Bureau said in a statement, we never lose sight of the threat extremists pose in the Jewish community and other religious, racial, and ethnic groups. The Bureau said in a statement on Sunday, this is terrorism-related matter in which the Jewish community was targeted and is being investigated by the Joint Terrorism Task Force. What a difference 24 hours makes, because 24 hours ago they were saying, we don't know why this person went to a synagogue. We have no idea what's going on with this, and we don't know what to do about this because there's no way that one of the leading anti-Semites in the world who's being imprisoned is now being defended by a person who's going into a synagogue and demanding her release. In the UK, the Greater Manchester Police say they arrested 2 teenagers in South Manchester for questioning on Sunday as part of their efforts to assist the US-led investigation. According to the FBI, Akram spoke repeatedly about a convicted terrorist who is serving an 86-year prison sentence on U.S. terrorism charges. That person is Afia Siddiqui, whose name Akram can be heard calling in a live stream that captured the opening moments of the standoff. Siddiqui is a U.S.-trained Pakistani neuroscientist who was arrested in Afghanistan on suspicion of terrorism. Persecutors say that following her arrest, she grabbed a rifle and fired it at U.S. soldiers and FBI officers while shouting "Death to America." No Americans were hit by the gunfire. Siddiqui was convicted in 2010. Now 49, she's currently being held a short drive from the Colleyville Synagogue at the FMC Carlswell prison in Fort Worth, Texas, according to a database of federal inmates. So, good. They're actually going to start to admit to what happened with this and where this goes. They couldn't keep it covered up forever. People were going to start asking questions. But that's what we see coming from that. God damn it. From CNN. What it was like inside the Colleyville, Texas synagogue during the 11-hour standoff. So, let's see what's going on with this. Let's read a little bit of this first. It started like most any Saturday for members of the congregation Beth Israel. Families of the Reform Jewish Synagogue just outside of Dallas-Fort Worth had gathered in person and online to participate in the Sabbath service, even amid the twin perils of fresh pandemic wave and a swelling tide of attacks on Jewish people in the U.S. But by day's end, the community of faith in Colleyville would be at the center of a global drama, including involving a live-stream hostage-taking, an imprisoned terrorist icon, an elite FBI rescue team, a rabbi's quick thinking, and a final frantic sprint to freedom. More details may yet offer a deeper understanding of why it happened, but already the tale is one of searing trauma, with the broader American Jewish community now forced to be resilient as it's reminded of the ever-present potential for disaster. Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker welcomed the man and made him a cup of tea, the rabbi told CBS on Monday. Citron Walker might not have immediately known that Malik Faisal Akram was a British national. Akram had arrived in the U.S. via New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport in late December. A U.S. law enforcement source familiar with the investigation told CNN. In the 2 weeks before he met Citron Walker, Akram had spent 3 nights, January 6th, 11th, and 13th, at a Dallas homeless shelter, according to Union Gospel Mission Dallas CEO Bruce Butler. He was very quiet and there wasn't there long enough to build any relationships, Butler said. Over their shared tea, Citron Walker and Akram talked, the rabbi said. Some of his story didn't quite add up, so I was a little bit curious, but that's not necessarily an uncommon thing, said the rabbi, who soon that day would lead a religious service for the 157 membership families of his congregation established in 1999. The rabbi appointed Jeffrey Cohen, the vice president of the Synagogue's board of trustees, to their guest on that day. Cohen went over and introduced himself. He wrote in a Facebook post describing his experience. He was on the phone, but briefly stopped the conversation, Cohen said. He said hello, smiled, and after we introduced ourselves, I let him go back to his call. He seemed calm and happy to be in from the frigid 20-degree morning. His eyes weren't darting around. His hands were open and calm. He said hello. He smiled. Excuse me. Because of the recent surge of the pinko pox, many of the congregation Beth Israel's members had stayed home on Saturday to watch the weekly prayer via Facebook or Zoom. Services began at 10 a.m. as the rabbi led the prayers, his back turned. As he faced towards Jerusalem, he heard a click. It came from the stranger. And it turned out that was his gun, Citron Walker said. Cohen said he heard the same click, the unmistakable sound of an automatic slide. Engaging around, the mysterious guest began yelling something. Cohen dialed 911 on his phone, but the screen side down and moved as commanded, he wrote. Akram took 4 people hostage, including the rabbi, authorities said. Police got an emergency call at 10:41 a.m. They rushed to the synagogue, set up a perimeter, evacuating residents nearby, police said. Soon, 200 local, state, and federal law enforcement, including the FBI and Federal Bureau ATF, were on hand. The FBI, Dallas Special Agent in charge, Matthew DeSarno, said. Meanwhile, the live stream intended for the faithful who'd stayed home to be safe from the pox appeared to capture some of what Akram was saying. I'm gunned up, I'm ammoed up, he told someone he called nephew. Guess what? I will die. The audio can be difficult to understand, and it's not clear whom Akram is talking to, but it's clear he planned to die during the standoff, he repeatedly told people. So there is a lot of stuff moving off of this, but his big thing, of course, was Elal Siddiqui. Let's have just a little bit of a look at this. Maybe.
Ed, what more do we know about the suspect and also his motive for taking these hostages last night?
Well, law enforcement officials have said that the motive, at least the preliminary indication of all of this, is that the suspect, Malik Faisal Akram, was primarily focused on this jihadist who was imprisoned here in the North Texas area by the name of Aifi Siddiqui, and that was the focus of much of his discussions and the reason for taking the people at this synagogue hostage. But this afternoon, law enforcement officials here still working at the scene of the synagogue where all of this unfolded, a nearly 11-hour hostage situation. And we are also hearing from Pastor Charlie Citron Walker, who was one of the, Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, who was one of the 4 people taken hostage here at the synagogue throughout much of the day. He posted in a Facebook post this morning saying that he's thankful and filled with appreciation for the vigils and prayers from around the world, and he's thankful to the law enforcement and first responders who saved them. He says, quote, I am grateful that we made it out. I am grateful to be alive. And remember, this was an incredibly harrowing moment, especially for the hundreds of people who belong to this synagogue who were watching on a live stream. And we can play a little bit of that for you now so you can get a sense of what the members of this synagogue were trying to process here just a little over 24 hours ago when this ordeal first started.
Yeah, but normally I'm in the synagogue and I'm all surrounded by my beard like that. So I've got these 4 guys with me, yeah. But I don't want to hurt them, yeah. Okay, you listening? I don't want you to cry. Listen. I'm going to release these 4 guys once they bring that doctor out here. I'll my sister doctor out here. So then I'm going to go in the yard, yeah, and then I'm going to have a shootout and they're going to kill me, alright? I'm going to die at the end of this, alright? Are you listening? I am going to die. Okay, so don't cry over me. Okay, don't cry over me. Tell them to Ibrahim alone, yeah? Tell them
Yeah, it sounds like a good British citizen, right? That's perfectly the Queen's, I'm guessing. Yeah, there's nothing else up here. He's just a regular British national. Couldn't you hear the talk of the crumpets and everything else out of that accent? Couldn't you hear the Cockney there? So this guy went into this intending to die, and that's what we see for that. Texas Synagogue hostage says gunman told them to get on their knees moments before daring escape. From Caitlin Yellick. One of the hostages in the synagogue standoff in Colleyville said that he thought the gunman was going to kill them shortly before they made their daring escape. Jeffrey Cohen, one of the 3 hostages, held at gunpoint for 11 hours inside the congregation Beth Israel on Saturday, said the suspect told them to get on their knees and that he was going to shoot them during the final hour they were held hostage. Cohen told the CBS Dallas-Fort Worth on Monday that throughout most of the ordeal, the hostage taker was calm and indicated he would not kill the hostages, but that he was prepared to die. But Cohen said the man's demeanor changed in the last hour or so. He said he was going to shoot each of us, to put a bullet in each of us, Cohen said. That was the first time that he said that, and then just a few moments later, he said, "I'm going to make you get down on your knees. Get down on your knees." Cohen said he stared at the gunman and mouthed, "No." That glare was the first time he showed any aggression towards him. We weren't subservient at that point, Cohen said. He started backing away immediately and went and sat down. Now, I didn't see him put his gun down, but I did see him go to pour some soda. And when he did that, Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker picked up the chair and threw it and yelled, "Run." I didn't see the chair go until I was running. Cohen also detailed several deliberate steps the hostages had taken throughout the standoff that made their escape easier, including sitting in areas with direct access to the exit. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what the situation was off of this, and some of this we're never going to know because the FBI went in guns blazing and killed the dude. So, that's the details of what we have happening here. Let's keep going. Let's move on. Let's grab one from Fox News. Michigan Democrats criticized after dismissing parents' role in public education. From Houston Keene. The Democratic Party blasted the idea that parents should have a voice in what public schools teach, saying in a Facebook post over the weekend that public education teaches kids what society needs them to know. A Saturday post made by the Michigan Democrats on their official Facebook page criticized the parents who want to play a role in what public education teaches their children. The post was deleted Monday morning after intense criticism. Not sure where this parent should control what is taught in schools because there are kids is originating, but parents do have that option to send their kids to a hand-selected private school at their own expense if this is what they desire, the post read. The purpose of public education in public schools is not to teach kids only what parents want them taught, the Michigan Democratic Party's post continued. It is to teach them what society needs them to know. The client of the public school is not the parent, but the entire community, the public. Boy, that sure sounds fucking communist, doesn't it? The Michigan Democratic Party later deleted the post and issued a quasi-apology. We have deleted the post and ignored the important role parents played and should play in Michigan public schools. Parents need to have a say in their children's education. End of story. A subsequent post on Monday stated, "The post does not reflect the views of Michigan Democrats and should not be misinterpreted as a statement of support from our elected officials or candidates." The state's Republicans were sharply critical of the Democrats' original post. Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan Democrat Party, continued to be in the pockets of the teachers' unions and are so out of touch with Michiganders that they believe parents shouldn't be involved in their children's education. Michigan GOP Communications Director Gustavo Portela told Fox News Digital in a Monday statement. Yeah, after what happened in Virginia, I can't imagine why anybody looked at this and said, "Yes, I'm going to post this." I'm going to post this because this is going to be a good idea. This will definitely get us elected again because we're doing what our clients tell us that they want to do. The public. That's our client. It's not the parents. Fuck the parents. They literally said that. And then I had to come back out and issue an apology because, well, they found out that it didn't go over very well. So, that's what we see coming from that. Good job, Michigan Democrats, by the way, for that one. The Daily Wire. Speaking of Michigan, former Detroit police chief neck and neck with Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan governor race, according to poll. From Tim Pierce. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is tied with former Detroit police chief James Craig in the race to be Michigan's next governor, according to a recent poll. A poll of likely 2022 general election voters in Michigan found that Whitmer and Craig are even in a head-to-head matchup with 46% of the vote. The poll by ARW Strategies was conducted through televote surveys with 800 people from January 4th to 6th. The poll's margin of error is 3.46%. Whitmer is barely above water but remains extremely vulnerable. A narrow majority have a favorable opinion of the governor, while 48% have an unfavorable opinion. However, the intensity of voters' opinions works against her. 38% of voters have a very unfavorable opinion of her versus 35% who have a very favorable opinion of her. Whitmer is also 12 points underwater with independents, which is a perilous position for her entering a re-election year, ARW reported. Chief James Craig is a clear frontrunner among Republican candidates. Craig's name identification nearly twice that of his three opponents. More crucially, Craig is the only Republican with a positive image, plus 9% net favorability among likely voters, and he has an 11% net favorable image among independents. 28% favorable to 18% unfavorable, AWR continued. Among likely general election voters, Craig is tied 46% to 46% with Gretchen Whitmer. Whitmer's numbers are up from September when she was losing a head-to-head with Craig. According to polling at the time done by the Trafalgar Group, Whitmer has taken criticism from state Republicans over her handling of the pinko-pox pandemic. The state legislature have pushed for an investigation of Whitmer's pandemic policies concerning nursing homes, with some lawmakers accusing the Democratic governor of shaping her policies around those followed by former New York Governor Andy Cuomo. Whitmer has since backed off her strict lockdown measures, even venturing criticism of President Biden's vaccine orders. We're an employer too, the state of Michigan, Whitmer said during a December town hall. I know if the mandate happens, we're going to lose state employees. That's why I haven't proposed a mandate at the state level. Some states have, we have not. We're waiting to see what happens in court. But we have a lot of the same concerns you just voiced, and it's going to be a problem for all of us, she added. Yeah, that's part of the problem too. I'm sure that Whitmer would love to see a mandate coming out of something like this, but after everything, the crisis with blocking off the Walmart, with blocking off the seeds, the gardening stuff, and everything else going out in the public, plus blocking off the waterways for people, and then having her husband come out and beg the Marina Authority to put his boat in the water anyway. I'm sure Whitmer would love to see a vaccine mandate go into place, but she doesn't want to be the one to do it, is the way I'm looking at this right now. She doesn't want to be the one to implement it. She wants to let somebody above her implement it and say, oh, sorry, darn, I didn't want to have this vaccine mandate, but you know, the federal government said that we had to do it, so. That's what we see off of that. Let's grab one from KOMO News. Case of praying high school football coach headed to the Supreme Court. From Alex Schimmel. The Supreme Court will hear the case of a former high school football coach who was restricted from praying at a midfield after games. The coach, Joe Kennedy, is arguing a lower court decision allowed the Washington State School District to fire him for refusing an order prohibiting him from praying on the field, according to First Liberty, a group helping Kennedy with the case. No teacher or coach should lose their job for simply expressing their faith while in public, said Kelly Shackelford, President and CEO of First Liberty. By taking this important case, the Supreme Court can protect the right of every American to engage in private religious expression, including praying in public, without fear of punishment. School officials were worried the prayers might give the impression the district approved of Kennedy's prayers, arguing that it could be seen as a violation of the Constitution's First Amendment Establishment Clause, according to the SCOTUS blog, which, of course, as we all know, is the only part of the First Amendment that the left in this country knows. Separation of church and state, and it's not even in the First Amendment. It's the only part of the thing that they know or care about. Separation of church and state. Look, here's the thing. Here's the thing about prayer in school and church. Now, if this coach was leading students, leading his charges in prayer, if he is walking up, pulling everybody in at the end of this and saying, okay, let's say the Lord's Prayer together for victory, and be humble if we get defeated. Let's say a prayer together for all of us. That would fall afoul of separation of church and state. But as far as his individual faith, his individual prayer, that shouldn't be a problem to anybody. And I want to know who brought this forward as a lawsuit in the first fucking place. Because there's really no reason for it. You want to talk about prayer in school? Come out and have an AP, or not an AP professor, but have a teacher somewhere in the school, in a public school, come back out and announce the fact that there's a pop quiz that's coming up here that you don't know about. It'll be starting in an hour, and it's going to be half of your grade. You want to start seeing prayer in fucking school? Then they're going to start doing that left and right. All these kids are going to start looking at this. They're going to find a quiet place to go so that, we don't get separation of church and state, and fold those hands and say, please let me finish this. Please let me get this taken care of. Prayer in school is not a big thing. And like I say, as long as it's not the staff leading somebody else in prayer, there should be no issue with this. But somebody was so offended, so horrified, that a coach was praying after games, that this had to make it to the Supreme Court. Another one from the Daily Wire for us. Flashback. Biden compared George Floyd's death to MLK Jr.'s assassination. From Virginia Kruta. On Monday, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, remarks President Joe Biden made about MLK and George Floyd in June of 2020 made the rounds online. Biden, who was running for president at the time, said that George Floyd's death in custody of former Minneapolis police officer had greater worldwide impact than the assassination of the civil rights icon. And this was talked about in the live chat yesterday on both programs too. Let's listen.
But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did.
And you can hear Kamal in the background. Biden made the comments during an economic roundtable discussion in Philadelphia on June 11, 2020. Just weeks after Floyd was killed, when former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin held him on the ground by kneeling on his neck for over 9 minutes. Biden explained that what he meant when he said was worldwide impact was the speed at which such stories could cover massive distances, in large part due to the prevalence of mobile phones and social media. Biden went on to add that the mobile phones and social media were changing the way people saw major issues like police brutality by giving them full and immediate access to view and then share videos like the one that showed Floyd's death. He then compared that to the way that television had changed the way many people viewed the civil rights movement and other issues, taking what was happening in the world and bringing it to living rooms all across the country. It's just like television changed the civil rights movement for the better when they saw Bull Connor and his dogs ripping the clothes off an elderly black woman going to church and fire hose ripping the skin off young kids, he said. What happened to George Floyd? Now, how many people around the country? Millions of cell phones. It's changed the way everyone's looking at this. Look at the millions of people marching around the world. And, of course, the biggest nightmare now for Martin Luther King looking down from heaven is the fact that he is being compared. His impact on the world is being compared to the impact of somebody who's ODing on fentanyl. All right. From Insider, Janet Yellen says in MLK's Day speech that the U.S. economy has never worked fairly for black people. Here we go. Do I have an author on this? Yes, Ashley Rodriguez. The U.S. economy has never worked fairly for black Americans, and there's more work to do to narrow the racial wealth divide, Janet Yellen said during a speech delivered on Monday in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The Treasury Secretary referenced in her remarks Dr. King's historic I Have a Dream speech, in which he likened the words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence to a promissory note, to which every American was to fall heir. It's obvious today that America has defaulted on its promissory notes insofar as our citizens of color are concerned, Dr. King said in the 1963 speech. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked with insufficient funds. During her pre-recorded remarks, which were delivered during Reverend Al Sharpton's annual National Action News Network breakfast in Washington, D.C., Yellen said Dr. King's words were more than a metaphor. He knew the economic injustice was bound up in the larger injustice he fought against, Yellen said. Our economy has never worked fairly for black Americans or any Americans of color. Yellen said that the Biden administration is working to change that. She pointed to recent achievements within the Treasury Department, including the completion of its first equity review, the appointment of a diverse leadership team, including the department's first counselor for racial equity, and a plan to invest $9 billion in minority communities. And that's of your money, too, by the way. But then she said there's much more work the Treasury needs to do to narrow the racial wealth divide. So there it is. Billions of dollars of your money invested into neighborhoods that they're going to try to redline and keep people into, and keep people out of regular society until they need them for voting day. Thank you, Janet Yellen, for that. Let's grab one from CNBC. Billionaire investor Shamath Palihapitiya says no one cares about Uyghur genocide in China. From Amanda Macias. Billionaire investor Shamath Palihapitiya triggered a backlash on social media after saying during a recent episode of his podcast that no one cares about the ongoing human rights abuses against the Uyghurs in China. During a 90-minute episode, Palihapitiya told co-host Jason Calasanis on their All In podcast that he would be lying if he said that he cared about the Uyghurs or an ethnic Muslim minority in China's northwest region in Xinjiang. Every time I say I care about the Uyghurs, I'm really just lying if I don't really care, and so I'd rather not lie to you and tell you the truth. It's not a priority for me, said Palihapitiya, a venture capitalist who owns 10% of the NBA team, the Golden State Warriors. The team wrote in a statement Monday that Palihapitiya does not speak on behalf of the franchise, and his views certainly don't reflect those of our organization. The duo began talking about the Uyghurs when Calasanis praised President Biden's foreign policy approach to China. For months, the Biden admin has previously described the abuse of Uyghurs and members of the other Muslim minorities in the region as a widespread state-sponsored forced labor and mass detention. The Biden admin has also warned businesses with supply chain and investment ties to Xinjiang that they could face legal consequences. In July, that warning manifested as a joint advisory from the Departments of State, Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security, and Labor, along with the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. The most pointed line from the Xinjiang Supply Chain Business Advisory says that the businesses and individuals that did not exit the supply chains, ventures, and or investments connected to Xinjiang could run a high risk of violating U.S. law. The Chinese government has previously denied any wrongdoing or human rights abuses in Xinjiang. So, that's interesting. And this gentleman looks like he might be of some sort of Middle Eastern descent. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Indian, I'm not sure. But that's not something that you just come back out and say, hey, nobody cares about the fact that there are people being abused. There are people who are being forcefully sterilized and forced into slavery in China. You just don't come back from that. Grab one from regular NBC. North Korea conducts 4th missile test this month. From Dennis Romero. North Korea test fired as many as 2 rounds of short-range ballistic missiles on Monday, South Korean officials said. The missiles were fired east from the Sunan Airport area of Pyongyang, the capital, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. The launch was also reported by officials in Japan. Defense Minister Nobuo Kishi said in an impromptu briefing the missiles were estimated to have flown roughly 3,000 kilometers, or about 186 miles, off of North Korea's eastern coast. In a statement, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said that while the launch did not pose an immediate threat to U.S. personnel or territories or to its allies, it highlighted the destabilizing impact of North Korea's weapons programs. The launch follows tests on January 5th, 11th, and 14th. Experts believe the activity is a reprisal for new sanctions the Brandon administration has imposed last week over North Korea's continued test launches. Earlier this week, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called for strengthening the country's strategic military forces after observing the test of what state media has said was a hypersonic missile. It was the first time since March of 2020 that he had officially attended a missile test. The Japanese Defense Ministry said that the latest launch was detected shortly after 9 a.m. on Monday. Vessels were advised to pay attention to further information and, if they see a falling object, to stay away from it and report the relevant information to the Japan Coast Guard, the Coast Guard said in a statement. South Korea's National Security Council convened an emergency meeting in response to the launch. In a statement, it called North Korea's recent missile tests extremely regrettable and emphasized the importance of resuming talks. You know what happened? Do you remember when the missile tests stopped in North Korea? And yeah, they did crank up for a little while, right at the beginning, in 2017, 2018. They cranked up for a little while, but they just kind of stopped. Not long after that. You remember that? For a while, nobody had to worry about what was going on in North Korea. And then all of a sudden, now we're back. Now we have to hear about it. Now we have to wonder what's going to happen next. Are we going to see a missile fly? Are we going to hear death to America? I don't know. I just know that there was one thing that changed last year. And then the missile test started once again. Can anybody remember what that one thing that changed last year was? Right before the missile test started again? Right before the little fat puke realized what he can get away with? I remember. Let's grab one from the BBC. North Korea fires missiles again amid unusual flurry of tests. No author given because the BBC. North Korea has fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into waters off of coast of Japan, the latest in an unusual flurry of tests. The missiles were reportedly launched from an airport near Pyongyang early on Monday, said South Korea's military. Japan also confirmed the test. It is North Korea's 4th missile launch in 2 weeks. The UN prohibits North Korea from ballistic and nuclear weapons tests. It has imposed strict sanctions. But the East Asian state regularly defies the ban, and leader Kim Jong-un has vowed to bolster his country's defenses. On Friday, it said that it had fired short-range ballistic missiles from trained cars, while days earlier conducted 2 tests of what it claims were hypersonic missiles, which are harder to detect. The frequency of the tests and timing in January is unusual. North Korea tends to conduct its missile launches to mark politically significant events in the country, or as a sign of its displeasure at the U.S.-South Korea military exercises. North Korea usually launches weapons to develop missile capabilities and maintain operational readiness, and the latest tests appear to confirm this, said Ankit Panda, an expert with the Carnegie Endowment for the International Peace. But at the same time, Kim Jong-un has domestic considerations at the time of the economic difficulty. These launches allow him to convey that the national defense priorities will not fall by the wayside, Mr. Panda told the BBC. So, very interesting indeed. And I'm not sure where this goes, and I don't know what they've got for payload, what they've got for warheads. I don't know if they're blowing up when they're hitting off the coast of Japan. I don't know what's actually happening with this at this point, or if they're just testing the rocket systems of various missiles at this point. We'll have to continue to watch and see, and continue to see where this goes. Let's grab one more here from NPR for us. In Greece, unvaccinated people ages 60 and up now face monthly fines. This comes to NPR from the Associated Press, but don't let that stop you. You still need to hit that donate button because NPR needs our money, comrade. So they need to spread the communist ideals all around and tell you why you should be facing monthly fines if you're not vaccinated either. So, NPR, National Progressive Radio, let's see what they had to say. Pray for Quest Fanning. From Athens. Greece imposed a vaccination mandate Monday for people 60 and older as the country's vaccination rate remains below the European Union average, and a spike in infections has put sustained pressure on Greek hospitals. Older people failing to get vaccinated will face penalties starting at €50 or about $57 fine in January, followed by a monthly fine of €100 after that. About 2/3 of Greece's 10.7 million people are fully vaccinated, while the EU average is just over 70%, but COVID deaths and daily hospitalizations have increased following the arrival of the highly contagious Omicron variant, though pressure on the ICU capacity has eased slightly. Health Minister Thanos Plevris said the fines would be collected through the tax office, with the money going to help fund state hospitals. The age factor is important because of its impact on public health service, Plevris told the private Open TV on Sunday. Greece imposed a vaccination mandate for healthcare workers last year, and starting on February 1st, vaccination certificates for adults will expire after 7 months unless the holder receives a booster. New infections surged sharply in early January, but have eased over the past week. The vaccination mandate for the 60 and older age group was announced in late December, and according to government data, 41.5% of the 530,000 people targeted by the measure are now fully vaccinated. Opinion polls suggest strong public support for the mandate, but some lawmakers across party lines have questioned the legality of signaling out a specific group. The government defended the measure as constitutional, citing a 2020 High Court decision allowing public daycare centers to refuse children who had been vaccinated or not been vaccinated for childhood illnesses. Government spokesman Giannis Okinobu said people with legitimate health exemptions, those who had suffered recent infection, and applications for home vaccination appointments that were delayed would be spared the fine. The law will be fully enforced, Okinobu said. So that's what we see coming from that. And one more. Just briefly, taking ABC News on the same thing here. In Greece, unvaccinated older people now face monthly fines. But I think this is going to be a lot of the same what we saw. Yeah, this is the same information. €50 in January, followed by a monthly €100 fine after that. So there you go. If you're old in Greece, you're going to be fined. You're going to be fined for not following the vaccine mandate. Enjoy. On our showers here, from the Hills Changing America, Apple now mandating boosters for some employees. From Adam Barnes. Apple will reportedly require corporate and store employees to get booster shots. An internal memo viewed by The Verge said employees will have 4 weeks to receive a booster once they become eligible for the additional dose. Employees who do not comply will be required to undergo regular testing prior to entering both offices and stores on February 15th. Due to waning efficacy of the primary series of the pinko-pox vaccines and the emergence of the highly transmissible variants such as Ermagerd, a booster is now part of staying up to date with your COVID-19 vaccination to protect against severe disease, Apple reportedly wrote in the memo. The company will additionally require employees who have yet to confirm vaccination status or those who remain unvaccinated to provide proof of a negative result from a rapid antigen test starting on January 24th, according to The Verge. Meanwhile, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, reportedly said earlier this month that it will mandate vaccine boosters for employees working on its U.S. campuses. Boosters provide increased protection, a Meta spokesperson told the Wall Street Journal. Given the evidence of booster effectiveness, we are expanding our vaccination requirement to include boosters. And, of course, we still need to feed on your data. Give us your data and get your booster, please. Data. We need your data. Look, this should still be your choice as to what to do. And a lot of what we see of this, like with Apple, let's be completely fair with all of this. A lot of your Apple employees are going to run right out and get the vaccine as soon as they're eligible to do so. That's going to be the first side of this because they work for Apple, plus they own Apple, so they're used to just doing what they're told because it keeps them safe. I don't know if you need to be vaccinated to be a customer in the Apple Store. I have no idea. I have no desire to ever go into an Apple Store ever again. But yeah, this is all become craziness as we continue to go further and further, deeper and deeper down into this. And it'll be interesting to see what happens if there are injuries at some point for some of this too. Now, of course, the vaccine is totally safe and nothing bad could possibly happen, so don't ban me, Susan. But in a simulation somewhere, if there was an injury to something, does this mean now that Apple and Meta can both be sued by the employees that get injured because they were required to take this thing? And it got connected to the vaccine that they otherwise wouldn't have taken? I'm not sure. Because I think a lot of them would have otherwise taken it anyway, but that's going to be one of the big questions that we're going to have here is what happens with vaccine injury at this point. Where are we going to see that happen and what's going to happen with that? But of course, there is no bad aspect to the vaccine. Honk, honk. Nothing bad could possibly happen from the vaccine. Honk, honk, honk. It's perfectly safe, and all it'll do is give you super immunity from everything. You'll never have to worry about anything again until your booster needs to be renewed. Honk, honk. But that's what we see for that. From CNN. Ghislaine Maxwell ends fight to keep 8 John Doe's secret. Court to decide whether names should be unsealed. From Lorelei. Ghislaine Maxwell will no longer fight to keep the names of 8 John Does secret, and will leave it to the court to decide whether the name should be unsealed, according to a January 12th letter to federal judge Loretta Preska of the SDNY. The documents containing the names are connected to a 2015 defamation case brought by Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who claimed Epstein sexually abused her while she was a minor and that Maxwell aided the abuse. The case was settled in 2017. Maxwell, 60, faces up to 65 years in prison after she was found guilty last month in a New York federal court on 5 federal charges, including sex trafficking of a minor. The charges were related to her role in Epstein's sexual abuse of minor girls between 1994 and 2004. After careful review of the detailed objections submitted by non-party Does 17, 53, 54, 55, 73, 93, and 151, a counsel for Maxwell writes to inform the court she does not wish to further address those objections. Maxwell attorney Laura Menninger wrote, each of the listed Does has counsel who have ably asserted their own respective privacy rights. Ms. Maxwell therefore leaves it to the court to conduct the appropriate review. Giuffre's attorney filed a brief on Wednesday, arguing for the names to be revealed. Generalized aversion to embarrassment and negativity that may come from being associated with Epstein and Maxwell is not enough to warrant continued sealing of information. This is especially true with respect to the case of public greater interest involving serious allegations of the sex trafficking of minors, Giuffre attorney Sigrid McCauley wrote. Which, I mean, it's interesting, and we know that there are other people on the end of this. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell is just going to go back out and sex traffic to nobody. Are we actually to sit back and believe that's what happened? She just sex trafficked to absolutely nobody? Because I don't believe it. And most of you should be smart enough that you don't believe it either. As far as what happens with this, I'm not sure. I don't know if something bad might happen to the judge or something bad might happen to Maxwell and this goes with Maxwell. I don't know. I'm not sure. But there is something here. There's definitely something here, and, well, I guess a lot of us really do want to see what happened, where it goes. Let's grab one from Care 11. Archived because they do this awful autoplay all the time. And even if you turn the autoplay back off, it plays the next video on there every 2 minutes, and it turns the sound back on. Every 2 minutes. Ex-Vikings player stops attempted carjacking outside Adina preschool. From Divan Raming of Care 11. From city streets to the doorsteps of a preschool, the latest attempted carjacking happened right outside the Kiddie Academy in Edina. Attacking a parent who's at a preschool to get their kid is one of the more sick things you can do, said Robert Blanton, owner of the preschool and former Vikings defensive back. In surveillance video from inside the school, Blanton can be seen leaping into action in an attempt to stop the would-be thief. I just kind of see her body, slung to the ground multiple times. I immediately, as soon as I took off to go help her, said Blanton. When asked if he was at any point afraid for his life, Blanton responded, after I started thinking about it, I was like, man, this could have gone way differently. He went on to say, at the time, I don't think there was another guy, but I ended up jumping in the car. I tried to pull him out, and they reversed the car, attempted to run me over. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured, including what Edina detectives Ben Wenande has seen happen in similar cases. A lot of these people that we're seeing, they're armed or have been at times. They have used violence against other people, said Wenande. Edina. So, what would you do if you find yourself as a witness in a similar situation? If you're in a safe spot, videos always are help, so have a phone and can record it safely. If you can, call 911. Please do that, said Wenande. We obviously don't want to have more victims or more people get hurt. He went on to say, whatever you can help that person out after things have settled down, don't put yourself in a position to get hurt and help after the fact. Many people are now calling on persecutors to do more to hold those responsible accountable. Look, here's the thing. If I see somebody, especially with a kid involved, attempting to get carjacked, I am going to step in. It's just going to happen because it's the right thing to do. Some people can't defend themselves the same way as everybody else.
Do or do not. There is no try.
And even if it does cost me my life to do so, there'll be enough there for at least somebody else, or either a delay or some sort of evidence into something to help make sure this person gets caught and put away for attempting to take someone else's stuff. So big things for me. Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. So that's where we sit with that, and yes, absolutely I would. Let someone else take the video. Alright, from ABC 13, we're almost done here. Miaris announced investigation into Virginia Parole Board at Loudoun County Schools. From Brenna McIntosh. Just hours after being sworn in, Attorney General Jason Miaris announced that investigations into the Virginia Parole Board and the Loudoun County Public Schools are officially open. Glenn Youngkin signed 2 executive orders granting Miaris the ability to open the investigations. Miaris issued the following statement on Saturday. One of the reasons Virginians got so fed up with the government is the lack of transparency, and that's a big issue here. The Virginia Parole Board broke the law when they let out murderers, rapists, and cop killers early from their sentences without notifying the victims. Loudoun Country Public Schools covered up a sexual assault on school grounds for political gain, leading to an additional assault of a young girl. Virginians have dealt with the horrific aftermath of these scandals without any understanding of how or why they were able to happen. Virginians deserve answers. They want transparency and accountability. As a candidate, I promise to investigate these scandals and be as open and transparent as possible because Virginians deserve nothing less. As AG, I'm proud to say that the process has begun. Investigations by my office to the Parole Board and Loudoun County Public Schools are open. These investigations are not solely to go after or bring criminal charges against any one actor, but to learn what mistakes were made so that no other parole board or schools ever repeats them. I now ask you for time and patience as my team begins the investigations. I'm a big believer in measuring twice and cutting once, and that's what we plan to do here. I will continue to be transparent during the process. When they are ready, I will be releasing my findings to the public. So, good, we're actually going to look into some of the stuff that's happening in some of these other states, and I hope it's nothing, I really do. I hope that there is enough out there, there's enough honesty and integrity in government that we don't have to see anything major out of this, and this is just a vestigial step. But I've been watching the government for 3 years and making videos about it for 3 years, and I know that that's false. So that's from that. Let's grab one from Fox News. Loudoun County says it's withholding sexual assault investigation reports to avoid re-traumatizing victims. From Sam Dorman. The Loudoun County School Board laid out Friday a series of measures to prevent future sexual assaults and said releasing the results from its recent investigation would be illegal as well as risk re-traumatizing those involved. Earlier this week, a judge sentenced a Loudoun County teenager charged with sexual assault at 2 separate high schools. The judge found the boy guilty on Wednesday and ordered him to register as a sex offender, something she said she had never done to a minor before. He will be on supervised probation until his 18th birthday, placed in a residential treatment facility. First and foremost, the report cannot be released because of the privacy of the families involved and must be protected, the school board press release on Friday read, referring to the conclusion of investigation into how it handled the 2 high-profile allegations. The national interest in this investigation would preclude any chance of allowing the families to heal in private and move forward with dignity. The division and our board must believe we must do whatever we can to avoid re-traumatizing the student and the families involved in the incidences. Furthermore, the division is legally obligated to protect the student confidentiality. The decision was also based on the advice of legal counsel, which determined that the report falls under protections of the attorney-client privilege. So there are a few things with this. Now, under almost all normal circumstances, and that's part of the reason that we don't have the assailant's name either on this one, as everybody is a minor, 14 to 15 years old. So no, that normally doesn't get released to the public for any reason whatsoever. Now, unless there is some major extenuating circumstance. These details do not get released, so there is that aspect to this. This is not just some major thing where they're saying, oh, well, this is a new thing and they're just trying to cover up. No, these are minors. These are minors. And minor names just don't get released out to the public like that. So there is that aspect to this. I believe that, yeah, this is going to wind up remaining sealed, and it should. Let the minors live their minor lives. If they want to come out and do a tell-all once they're 18, that's on them. But they're under their own commission at that point. They're not under the care and commission of somebody else at those ages. And even then, their lawyers are going to urge against doing something like that. All right, last one. Then we'll do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day, which is good because my back is hurting a little bit. Veteran newsman Ted Koppel tries to explain to journalists why liberal media bias is bad. Journalist wants to know if bias is okay as long as Trump is the target. From Chris Field. Ted Koppel, the legendary newsman and longtime host of ABC's Nightline, which has made headlines in recent years, with his comments about left-wing media bias and left-wing media, don't want to hear it. Remember when he upset CNN's Brian Stelter in 2018 by saying CNN would be nowhere without the liberal network's favorite punching bag, Donald Trump? Koppel told Stelter at the time that Trump has been wonderful for the media industry and that CNN would be lost without Trump. When Stelter pushed back, Koppel replied CNN's ratings would be in the toilet without Trump. And they are, by the way. And what about when he declared in 2019 that Trump was not mistaken in his belief that the liberal media is out to get him? Koppel noted at the time that some blatantly biased anti-Trump network made by journalists were things that are not said by people who consider themselves reporters, objective reporters of facts. The newsman added that he was terribly concerned about bias that was clearly creeping into the front pages of the newspapers like the New York Times, a former newspaper, and the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. We're talking about organizations that believe, I have in fact, decided as organizations that Donald J. Trump is bad for the U.S., he said, adding, we have things appearing on the front page of the New York Times right now that would have never appeared 50 years ago. Analysis, commentary on your front page. That one didn't sit well with the media either. And they still can't let it rest, wanting to continue to justify their bias. On Sunday, News Nation host Dan Abrams pressed Koppel on his past remarks, specifically the 2019 comments, asking the veteran journalist if he still felt that way and if he believed it impacted the media's coverage of Trump. After praising the Times and Post for doing a lot of brilliant journalism, Koppel did not relent on his views about the media's bias. I think opinion belongs on the opinion page, and that's why they call it the op-ed section, he said. And that's where the opinion pieces are, and the columns, that's where the editorials are, and that's where it belongs. I don't like seeing opinion being expressed on the front page of a great newspaper, he continued, adding that he wished newspapers wouldn't slip into that category. It bothers me when I see them losing some of the criteria they've always used to keep a wall between opinion and news coverage. Abrams, however, was not to be deterred in attempting to justify blatant media bias when it comes to Trump. Because, after all, Trump deserved it. What the fuck? Let's try that again. Go away. Where the fuck were we before the page blanked out? The response to that from some would be that Trump is different and they had to be covered differently by the media than others. Abrams said, what do you make of that? Koppel was not allowed to let the media off the hook that easily. I think that if you start drawing those distinctions, it's very difficult to know where you stop drawing the distinction, he replied. Do you feel that way about anyone else in politics? Are we going to start picking up our morning newspaper to see who's in and who's out in terms of news coverage? Koppel continued. Again, there's a place for that in the op-ed section. I don't like it on the front page. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
We're back with legendary journalist Ted Koppel, now senior correspondent for CBS Sunday Mornings. Let me ask you, back in 2019, you said the following. You said, I'm terribly concerned that when you talk about the New York Times these days, when you talk about the Washington Post these days, we're not talking about the New York Times of 50 years ago. We're not talking about the Washington Post of 50 years ago. We're talking about organizations that I believe have, in fact, decided as organizations that Donald J. Trump is bad for the United States. Do you still feel that way? And if so, how has that, do you think, impacted media coverage of Donald Trump over the past few years?
Well, let me be absolutely clear. I think the New York Times and the Washington Post do some absolutely brilliant journalism. But I think opinion belongs on the opinion page. That's why they call it the op-ed section. And that's where the opinion pieces are, the columns, that's where the editorials are, and that's where it belongs. I don't like seeing opinion being expressed on the front page of a great newspaper. Having said that, let me say again, I think the Times, the Post, the Wall Street Journal are doing some of the best journalism that I have seen over the past 50 years. I just wish they wouldn't slip into that category. And when you start, Lyndon Johnson used to say, when you get down in the mud with a hog who loves it, and you both get dirty, right? So it bothers me when I see them losing some of the criteria that always used to keep a wall between opinion and news coverage.
And as you know, the response to that from some would be that Donald Trump is different, that he has to be covered differently by the media than others. What do you make of that?
Well, I think if you start drawing those distinctions, it's very difficult to know where you stop drawing the distinction. Do you feel that way about anybody else in politics? Are we going to start picking up our morning newspaper to see who's in and who's out in terms of the news coverage? Again, there is a place for that in the op-ed section. I don't like it on the front page.
Yeah. What do you, let me actually, in an exchange in 2017, you told Sean Hannity that you think he's, quote, bad for America. Let me play that piece of sound here.
Sure.
We have to give some credit to the American people that they're somewhat intelligent and that they know the difference between an opinion show and a news show.
Yeah.
You're cynical. Look at that.
I am cynical because,
You think we're bad for America? You think I'm bad for America?
Yeah.
You do?
In the long haul, I think you and all these opinion shows.
That's sad, Ted.
No, you know why?
That's sad.
So let me ask you this. You were very direct with Sean Hannity. Do you think that there's a place for opinion shows that offer opinions from different sides as opposed to just one side?
Well, whether I feel that there's a place for them or not, it's absolutely inevitable that they're going to appear now. That's why the cable networks are making money these days.
So, and that's a big side of this too. And I mean, I've been open about the fact that this is an opinion program. This always has been. I have a bias. I've been open about my bias. I want the government to leave me the fuck alone. I'm not a Republican. I'm definitely not one of those. I'm not a Democrat. I just want to be left alone. But I do still try to be as objective as possible and explain, you know, the big thing on this one, like with the healthcare worker. The thing that we saw last week with the healthcare workers and the vaccine mandate. I've said right from the beginning, I don't like the fact that they're still mandated. But I understand why. It's because they're working under federal contract dollars. So the federal government gets final say in the decisions of the workforce. I don't like it. I think it sucks. But I understand why. And I understand the objective side of this. I try to be as objective as humanly possible with this. And it doesn't always work. Because I'll tell you what I think just the same. But with that, that's what Koppel has to say. And yeah, especially from these papers of record, they're more op-ed at some point, and they're getting their op-eds on the front page than I am, who didn't even go to journalist school. So that's what they have to say for that. And before we head out of here for the day, we're going to do the last thing that we always do on a Tuesday, and that is the Twitter trending for the week. So we always look through, we grab the top 5 Twitter trends of the week and bring them out here. And sometimes we find news for the next day just by doing this too. So, and sometimes we find stuff that got deleted within the 24 hours between this day and the next one because they can't handle having the truth out of here. So let's look at what the top 5 trends are for the day. Number 1 is Microsoft, because it looks like Microsoft is going to be buying Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. It's largest takeover and the big bet on the metaverse. So I don't know if this means that, they're going to try to make everything completely VR for the metaverse, for everything off of this. I'm a little curious as to see where this goes because I have chosen not to put any more money into Activision Blizzard because of some of the things that they've done and some of the decisions they made on a corporate level. But I am a big fan of Blizzard, at least, not necessarily Activision. But this means, by the way, that Microsoft now owns Bethesda, which means they own the entire Fallout franchise. They own the Elder Scrolls franchise. They own the new one that's coming out, the Starfield franchise that's going to be coming out this coming year. And now they own Warcraft, World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, Call of Duty, and Destiny on top of all of this. They're all owned by Microsoft now. So if you're not a fan of Gates, it might change how it is that you choose to go do gaming at this point. Apparently they own Candy Crush too. And, Overwatch, I suppose. So, there you go. Number 2 is Sony. Sony is trending today. Why is Sony trending today? Nikkei Asia says Sony's management envisions a shift from mechanics to electronics in the auto industry. As software becomes more central to operating cars, the conglomerate sees opportunity to come out as a winner. Sony's EV project is driven by software, not mechanics. Which, that's all well and good, but you're still going to have somebody to fix your moving parts at some point when you're coming off of this. But yes, it appears that the big thing with Sony right now is that they're trying to break into the EV market. Plus, they also have insane to think that Microsoft owns Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, characters people consider PlayStation mascots. They nabbed all of Rare's and Nintendo mascots. Now they have Sony's. Sony shooting looks over to Square Enix after this morning. Yeah, because they need mascots now. Sony bros, PlayStation bros don't feel so good. First Bethesda, now Activision Blizzard. Microsoft buys Activision, Sony. I have nothing left except Spider-Man. So, yeah. More stuff, I think, mostly on the Microsoft purchase, so that's what we see coming from that. Alright, Wordle 213X. People try to guess today's 5-letter word in 6 tries or fewer in Brain Teaser Wordle. I have no idea what any of those words mean. This game is stupid. The answer is always sheds and I refuse to accept otherwise. Wordle 213X6. Bugger Wordle 213X6. I don't understand. I don't know anything about Wordle. I've never heard of Wordle. I've never used it. I don't know how it works. But apparently they're trying to figure out what the 5-letter word is. Alright. PlayStation, number 4. If you want to bet, it's probably going to be a lot of the same thing that we saw in Sony and Microsoft. Been associated with PlayStation for years, now owned by Microsoft. Rare's mascots, yeah, a lot of this we've seen already. The entire world's about to forget that Crash Bandicoot was ever associated with PlayStation. Yep. To all the PlayStation Call of Duty players, it's time to play a better game. Final Fantasy XIV, no thank you. Will Call of Duty be a yearly release? Will Activision Blizzard games come to PlayStation? What's changing for all these franchises? Will Xbox fix the game? So many questions, so little answers right now. So that seems to be what the world is up in arms in, is the purchase of Activision by Microsoft. So with that, I'm actually going to do 2 more off of this one. Just because most of what we saw was Microsoft Sony. So here's one from Gorsuch. Number 5 trending is Gorsuch. Justice Gorsuch is the only member of the Supreme Court who refuses to wear a mask to help protect high-risk Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Nina Totenberg reports that the Chief Justice asked his colleagues to mask up out of respect for Sotomayor's health concerns. Only Gorsuch refused. His refusal forced Sotomayor to participate in arguments and conference remotely. Steve Vladek says that Justice Sotomayor is choosing to participate in SCOTUS arguments remotely because Gorsuch, and only Gorsuch, refuses to wear a mask on the bench is such a perfect microcosm for how millions of Americans are experiencing the pandemic from both perspectives.
Without the council.
And Caitlin says if Gorsuch was not testing positive at the time nor had symptoms, Sotomayor's request was unjustified. Well, they could be spreading asymptomatically. But I mean, that's realistic too. They're getting tested all the fucking time for this, so I don't know. The masks don't do a damn thing anyway. They make people feel good. But we'll see what happens with that. And the last one, Carhartt. We'll do 6 trends today. People react to an email circulating online apparently sent to retail brand Carhartt's associates, which reiterates the company's mandatory vaccination program in light of the Supreme Court ruling in OSHA vaccine mandate. Tim Pool says, how about this? If you don't want to get vaccinated and you work at Carhartt, quit. Fuck them. Yeah, it might be that time. Carhartt is subjecting their employees to medical abuse. Very bad look. Definitely should stop buying their products if you do, which is sad because I need a new Carhartt jacket. Quartering says, wow, Carhartt, do you even know who buys your stuff? This is why I constantly tell people to make sure they're going out and touching grass. This baloney is going to cost them millions. There isn't a single person I know that wears their stuff that supports vaccine mandates. And, well, I mean, I've always worn work in sport anyway, so that could be different. I'm not sure. I would have to look into work in sport, but... First word says the Carhartt name used to mean rugged fashion. Now it just means coward fascism. And we are going to see some of this kind of stuff too, and some of these companies are. I mean, these companies have to sit back and make the decision as to what's best for them and their customers, and grapple with the idea that some of this stuff might get out. This isn't all just an internal thing anymore like it used to be. And people will find out about it, and they will come out and make a decision as to whether or not to buy the product. Carhartt is very, very expensive. You buy one, fuck, I've had my work in sports since I was 18. I bought that when I was 18 years old. And it's still holding together. You buy one of those once every 10 years usually. It's been almost 20 for me at this point, but you buy one of those once every 10 years. That's a big purchase for most people who have Carhartt. And now it's time to go back and actually start recommending against it at this point. And obviously don't burn the Carhartt that you have, because they've already got your money, but still. It might be time to start looking into a different brand. So that's what we see coming from that. That's what we're going to finish out on for the day. Let's head out of here. Which is good because my back is getting a little bit tight here. I'm going to throw a painkiller down and see if I can nap a little bit more of this off and head out of here for the day. So, with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by, chatted in the live chat, hung out with us, kept us going through the morning. Remember, if you are just lurking right now, get those last minute messages in so I can come and get your name written down and say thank you to you guys for coming back and enjoying the show with me. We do that on Fridays. So if you want to hear your name get called out after you've made your lurking message, make sure that you come back and join us at the end of the show on Friday for that. And we'll be back here tomorrow with more contemporary. Shortened, of course, because today's the last day of quarantine, so I go back to work tomorrow, so we will see you guys then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.